So welcome back everybody to Lawyers Happy Hour. This is our August 1st, 2024 edition, and I'm so delighted that everybody is here. Just to introduce myself, I'm Daya Nave. I run the Success Partner. It's also known as a law firm co-pilot. So we are helping firms start, grow, pivot, or exit. And today we'll have Brooke Lively, the book of Exit on Top, which as you can imagine, focuses on the exit part. But much like if you're getting your house ready to sell and you decide that all the renovations look great and you want to stay there, that might apply to you and your law firm as well. And so, Brooke, she did say since it was a small group, we could ask questions as we go along or save them to the end, either way. And we do keep it just to an hour. So just keep that in mind. And without further ado, I'm going to let Brooke take it over and do her own introduction, and we'll just go from
All right. Well, like she said, I'm pretty casual, so we'll just kind of roll in and do this. Um, I I think through a series of bizarre events after grad school, I ended up running my family's law firm. And not too long after I joined, so did my brother. And Jonathan's deal with my father is that he had to go work for somebody else straight out of law school for the first few years. And only then could he come work for my father's firm. And it was time. So he did. And it became apparent really fairly quickly that while my brother loved to practice law, actually running a law firm wasn't his bliss. He wasn't very interested. And I was in a panic because the plan was to transition ownership of this firm from my father to him. And he didn't care about the economics of it. His idea of marketing was having lunch with a couple of people a month. He thought the time I wanted to spend on things like core values and firm retreats was a waste of money and lost billable time. You could totally forget about him looking at anything that was a financial report or management reports that I generated. And this isn't unique to my brother. It's how a lot of attorneys operate. And they have for hundreds of years. And it works to a point. And I felt like one of two people all the time. Either I was the HBIC, the head bitch in charge. Yes, my father named me that, ordering everybody around, or I was Sisyphus. I don't know if you guys remember him. He was the character in Greek mythology that would roll the rock up the hill every day and it would roll back down every night. And I swear that stupid thing rolled over me, directly over me every night, or at least it felt that way. And I could so easily see all the things that needed to be done to make the firm bigger, better, more profitable. But I couldn't get my brother, and very often my father, to take that action. And added to that frustration was I was building a business that I could never own because I wasn't an attorney. So ultimately, I left and started my own company. And then 2.5 years ago, I was at a conference in Miami, and there was a panel about non-attorney ownership of law firms. The woman who was head of Arizona's bar ethics committee was talking about how they were going to make this work. And I immediately thought back to my family. And I was like, here it is. Here's the opportunity. I've been waiting for this almost a decade. I'm going to own my own law firm, and I'm going to run it like a business, not a practice, because I'm interested in creating a marketing machine that does not depend on one person or one source of clients. I know that developing a conscious culture where you have the right people in the right seats reduces turnover and increases work product. And that if you run a firm by the numbers, you make quick decisions and productivity goes up, and so does profit. And I know I can do all of this better than most attorneys. And then I thought about all of our clients and what deregulation will mean for them. I own a fractional CFO company for attorneys. And when you add on the fact that the baby boomers are retiring, well, I think we're entering a period where a lot of law firms are going to change hands. So instead of starting my own firm, I wrote a book to help lawyers create more value or increase the value of their firms so that they can exit on top. Because I believe that attorneys, whoops, sorry, hold on. Let me back up. How do I back up? Murphy's Law. I believe that attorneys should be able to sell their firms and be financially rewarded for all the hard work they put into them. So here's what we're going to cover in the next half hour. I think they're the three biggest takeaways from my book. The first is all about getting ready to sell. The second is about what creates value in a law firm. And the third is the psychology of fixing. So let's look at the first one, getting ready to sell. I really struggled with what to call this section because, you know, first of all, most of you aren't attorneys, so you're not ready to sell your non-existent law firm. And the one of you that is a practicing lawyer, you know, probably isn't ready to sell. But it's good because most firms, if we put most firms on the market today, the owners would get a really rude awakening about what they could get for it. So really quick, I'm going to give you all the goods right here. A law firm is worth 2.5 to 4 times what is called SDE, Seller's Discretionary Earnings. And Seller's Discretionary Earnings consists of your salary, your draws, any net income or profit, and all those personal expenses you run through your firm. No judgment. I don't care. That is between you and Melinda. I'd like no opinion. Almost everybody does it.
I have an opinion.
I
Tell you what
want
I
to
tell.
know.
Well, I'll tell you what I tell every one of my clients, which is don't run your business like it's personal piggy bank. That's my opinion. There, done.
And yet most people will run some personal expenses through there, like their cell phone.
Yeah, I
or
mean that, of
their
course.
card. And the thing is that when you're talking about the value of your firm, you need to go through and find all those piddly little things that you're running through because they increase the value of your firm. So that needs to have looked great for the past 3 years. You want your SDE to look really good for 3 years. I want to see SDE at least 1/3 of revenue. If you're not there, it's going to take a couple of years to optimize the firm before you can even go to market. And let me tell you, you don't sell overnight, right, Melinda? If you're lucky, you're going to find a buyer in 6 months. And the deal might get done in 6 months. So a year to sell. Frank, is that pretty fast deal?
Yeah, that would certainly be a pretty
Yeah.
efficient deal. I mean, if you're talking about actually finalizing a deal, closing a deal, and starting to integrate practices, yeah, that would be
Yeah.
a pretty
So
quick
that's
turnaround.
like this. And then after the sale, you're going to have to stay on to transition. If you're lucky, it'll be a year. It'll probably be 2. So if you think about it, the total timeline from the point at which you decide to sell until you're out, but don't necessarily have all your money, is 7 years. So when you all are thinking about selling, when you're talking to your clients about selling, you need to have this 7-year timeline in mind. So I want to talk to you about 2 things that you can do or that you can tell your clients to do to help them get started on the journey. And the first is calculate the SDE. Figure out what the total owner benefit is. So remember, SDE is salary, draws, profit, and all the perks you've buried in your P&L. And the second one is create a timeline of when they need to start thinking about selling. And that 7-year timeline that I gave you, that's really not very realistic. So let's use these assumptions. A year and a half to transition, 1.5 years to sell, 3 years of good financials, and 3 years to get clean. So that's 9 years total. So if they want to sell in, what is it now, 2024, if they want to sell in 2033, they got to get on it now. All right, let's talk about the second topic. What creates value in a firm? And people are so surprised that as a CFO, I wrote a book about selling your firm. Yes, a CFO should always be looking forward, but normally we're trying to profitably grow and operate more efficiently. And here's the secret. A firm that is an attractive acquisition is also a great firm to own. It throws off a lot of cash. It has happy clients and happy employees, and it doesn't take a lot of effort from the owner. So let's look at those one at a time. The first thing an acquirer is going to look at, and you know, you can look at this speech in two different ways. You can look at it from the standpoint of being acquired, but you can also look at it as a buyer. A lot of our clients are high growth firms, and acquisition is a great strategy for growth. So, think about that with your clients also. So the first thing any buyer is going to look at is the financials. And I am assuming that you can produce financials in a matter of minutes. If not, that's a giant red flag. But at CAFCAP, we believe in running a firm on the rule of thirds. 1/3 of revenue goes to people, 1/3 goes to operating expense, including marketing, and 1/3 goes to profit. Now, those are our starting ratios, and from there we tweak a little bit for specific practice areas and for specific practices. But the question is, where's the money going? Are the people being overpaid, or are they under-delivering, underproducing? Overspending on people is one of the hardest things to fix in a law firm. Staff really is not very receptive if you walk in and cut their salaries. Now, you can rework comp structures to change them to a more incentive-based comp plan, but in a case like that, attrition is often your best friend in those kinds of situations. So a high spend on people could be really detrimental to the value of a firm. If overhead is more than 1/3, that's less of a problem. These are costs that can often be cut. You can get out of a lease, you can change software, or you can find a new provider for a service. The one place I encourage buyers and sellers to dig down is in marketing. If a firm is stable and not growing being the key phrase there, it should be spending about 10% of revenue on marketing. It also means, well, and that's 1/3 of the total spent on overhead. It also means that for every dollar spent on marketing, and this includes in-house marketing team members, salespeople, and more traditional like PPC campaigns, and all the stuff that Ron does, you should get back on average $10. And I know a lot of people aren't getting that. So I want to talk about the third, profit. Profit does a lot of things. It pays your draws, it pays taxes, it's used to create reserve funds, and it's used to reinvest in the company. When you are reinvesting, it's going to skew the ratios. When a PI firm spends additional money on marketing, they are basically buying cases that won't pay out for 18 to 36 months. They're investing in future revenue. When you hire a COO to come in and overhaul operations, you might not see that return for the first 6 months. That's an investment. So I encourage people to really look at the numbers and identify what are operating expenses and what are true investments, because it lets you make better decisions about whether or not those investments are paying off. And ultimately, what a buyer wants is a firm that throws off a lot of cash. And that's defined by that number we talked about, SDE, Seller's Discretionary Earnings. So, remember, SDE is owner's salary, draws, net income, tax payments, and all those pesky personal expenses. The buyer wants to know what SDE is because it's out of the SDE that they have to repay the loan that they got to buy the firm. And they need to make sure that they can repay the loan and still have enough to live on. All right. Let's talk about, whoops, hold on. All of a sudden, we're going too fast. All right. Let's talk about happy clients and happy people, because they depend on two things: the processes in place in your firm and the culture. Both are incredibly important, and both take time and intentionality to build. Do any of you guys use EOS? I see head shaking. That's awesome. I started my EOS journey about 10 years ago. I self-implemented, and eventually I contacted Gino Wickman and he assigned me an implementer. And after EOS developed into our #1 outgoing referral, I became an EOS implementer. And one of the most impactful things I learned about was process. Everybody always tells you that you need detailed instructions with pictures and arrows. I'm telling you that all you need to do is document the 20% of the steps that get 80% of the process completed. And I want you to think about that for a minute. It's the 80-20 rule. And I learned this through EOS and Mike Payton's book called Process. In addition, you only need to document the 20% of the processes that cover 80% of what happens in the firm. And this is so incredibly freeing, because all of a sudden that project that was totally overwhelming is absolutely manageable. And what it means, if you are selling, is that you can hand over a firm where the new owner can get 80% of the stuff done the first day. And 80% strong is pretty awesome. So as a buyer, you want to know that all the institutional knowledge isn't going to walk out the door when the previous owner does. And good processes create happy clients. Why? Because things get done the same way every time, and things are less likely to fall through the cracks. The firm is reliable and scalable. So let's talk about the next one: happy employees. In Good to Great, Jim Collins talks about getting the right people on the bus and then getting them in the right seat. So we shorten this to RPRS, right person, right seat. And this is what the people component in EOS is all about. Getting the right person on the bus is all about defining your culture, consciously developing and nurturing it, and making sure you're hiring the people who fit into that culture. Core values are the basis for your culture. So the foundation of having happy employees is core values. You need to hire, fire, review, promote, and reward based on your core values. It's that simple. Build your tribe. Once you have the right person on the bus, you need to make sure they're in the right seat, the seat where they can truly shine, where they enjoy the work and understand the roles and responsibilities that are expected of them. Dan Sullivan calls it a person's unique ability. So at this point, you've built a team of people who share core values, they get along, they're working in their unique ability, and they have a clear understanding of their job. Oh my God, it's like, who doesn't want to buy that? You know, it's running like a well-oiled machine. That's going to increase the value of the firm. If a buyer is looking for a firm that doesn't have that, yet the buyer is really great at creating RPRS, they know they can go in and get that firm for a bargain because they can build it up and increase the value. The last component that drastically increases the value of a firm is how dependent the firm is on the owner to keep the machine humming every day. The less time spent by the owner, the more valuable. The harder the new owner is going to have to work, the less they're willing to pay. So here's an example. If the owner is billing 85% of revenue, that's going to fall on the shoulders of the buyer. If the owner is, God forbid, handling all the financials, the buyer is going to have to either take that on or hire that out. And if they hire that out, they're going to have to pay for it, and that's going to reduce SDE. And if the marketing is full of the owner's name and image, you know, the new buyer either better be a doppelganger with the same name, or it's going to take a lot of time, effort, and money to reposition the firm. The more removed the seller is from the day-to-day operations of the firm, the more attractive it is for a buyer because they can see that it's less work for them. All right, so let's do the same thing. Here are two things that you can do or tell your clients to do that will help them go down this path. And the first is rate the firm's dependency on the owner. On a scale of 1 to 10, how dependent do you think the firm is on the owner? And the second is evaluate the team for right seats. There's a fabulous EOS tool that I love. It really is my favorite tool. And it's called GWC. And I want you to run it on all the people. And here's what it is. It's really simple. You're going to ask 3 questions about every person. Does the person get it? Do they understand their job? Do they want it? You would be amazed at how many times we promote people to jobs that they don't want. If the answer is no, you need to listen to it. And 3, do they have the capacity to do it? Capacity actually falls into 2 categories. The first is, do they have the skills required to do the job? The second is, do they have enough time to get it done? Every employee should be 3 yeses, 3 emphatic yeses. If they have a no, they're not in the right seat and they need to be gone from the firm, or at least from that job, and put in a job where they do have 3 yeses. The only exception to this is if they don't have time capacity. In that case, you need to start making a plan on how you're going to offload part of their job so they do have enough time. Oh, and by the way, if the answer to one of those questions isn't a hell yes, then it's a hell no. All right. So the last topic I want to talk about when driving the value of a law firm is the psychology of fixing. So in my book, I've got a quiz that asks 35 questions, and it helps show you where your firm is thriving and where it's fighting to survive. And the question that I get all the time is, hey, Brooke, that's great, but I need to fix all these different things. Where do I start? And the answer to that is it really depends upon your team and understanding how they work, what's important to them. So let me give you an example using debt. When people go to pay down their debt, they have to decide which method to use. The first is the snowball method. This is about building momentum, and you pay off your smallest balance first, and you get that quick win, and it gives you the confidence to keep going on to the next smallest balance. And you keep going and going and going. The other method is called the avalanche method. You choose the balance with the highest interest rate and you pay that one off first. This is for the more cerebral people who get a boost knowing they are saving more in the long run, and this is enough to sustain them in what can be a long and arduous process with, few goalposts and not many measurable wins. So let's go back to a firm that's got a number of areas where they need to work to increase the value of the firm before they sell. What's the owner's personality? And what's the personality of the team? Do they need to see some quick wins so that they don't get tired of a project and go find something else to do? I mean, that's so common in owners, right? If that's the case, I would suggest tackling the easiest things to fix first. Basically, use the snowball method. Or, are you the type of entrepreneur that starts 40,000 things and never finishes any of them? I have an EOS client out in Seattle, and it's a PI firm, and the owner is this awesome guy with lots of ambition, and he has never seen a shiny object he didn't want to go after. And when I started with them, he had said yes to so many things. His team was drowning and they couldn't get anything implemented because he kept throwing new things at them. And the first thing I did was sit down and help them prioritize the projects so that the ones that would move the firm forward the most got completed first. He sure didn't like me putting anything on a shelf, but holy cow, instead of 40 half-done projects, they have 15 complete ones and are quickly starting to check others off the to-do list. They took the avalanche method and tackled the projects that would make the most impact. You should also look at your skill set and the skill set of your team. And you need to be brutally honest here. When I was studying for the CFA exam, the Chartered Financial Analyst, it's a really hard test to pass. There was one section where I kept failing on every practice exam. And it didn't matter how much I studied or how many review courses I took, I kept failing. And I happened to know the guy who started, it was the Barbary of the CFA. And he sat me down one day and he looked at my practice test scores and he said, walk away from that section. And I thought, oh my God, you have lost your mind. I can't possibly do that. But we did the math and he said, even if I failed that section, I could still pass. And my time was better spent working on other sections where I could pick up points rather than this one that apparently was just kind of beyond me. The same might be true for you and your team or for that client that you're working with. One area might be beyond the team's skill set, beyond their ability to fix, to change, or evolve in the required amount of time. Trying would do nothing but demoralize the team. Sometimes you've got to know when to walk away. But the owner and the team walking away doesn't mean the firm has to walk away from value creation in that area. There are experts that specialize in helping law firms optimize every aspect of their practice. There are a number of them on this call today. Don't be afraid to hire one. And let me show you what this would look like. So if value is determined by multiplying SDE times somewhere between 2.5 and 4x, 2.5 for a small firm, 3.5 for an upper band kind of dominant firm, and 4 for a best-in-class firm with a proven track record of consistent revenue and high profit that doesn't require much effort from the owner. So we're going to do that. So if you anticipate having a 3.5x multiple, let's put something up here. if your revenue was $100, let's say your firm value would be $56, and you decide to hire a CFO, a fractional CFO, and afterwards they made some changes, didn't affect revenue, cut payroll just a little bit, marketing went down a little bit, overhead went down a little bit, SDE went up some, and the value went from $56 to $105. So $49 doesn't sound like a whole lot. But what if you're doing $2.5 million in revenue? Would it be worth hiring that fractional CFO company now? How much would you be willing to pay to have the value of your firm almost double? Not to mention that that same increase will happen to your income while you're waiting to sell. Look at the difference. You go from having net income of $400,000 a year to $750,000. So here's what you need to ask yourself. What improvements will have the biggest effect on value creation? Does my team have the skill set to create that change? And do I need to choose a different order because of our personalities? Okay, I think that's enough about the psychology of fixing. So here are a couple of things that are takeaways that you all can work on. The first is figure out how the team works best. And be honest here. Do you need to attack small problems sequentially so that you've got those wins to celebrate? Or is the team good at focusing on that one long, complex problem? Can your team handle juggling a lot of different projects at the same time? Got to understand what suits the team and what suits the owner. And frankly, those are probably two different things. And then think about the skill set of the team. Where's the team lacking? Where, if you brought in a professional, could somebody create a lot of value? So when I give this speech, the follow-up I usually get is, how do I figure out what part of the firm needs work? And if you wait till the end, I'll put up a QR code that links you to that free assessment that I mentioned, that 35 question quiz. And what this does is it shows you exactly where you should spend time improving your firm. And what it means is you can quickly and efficiently start increasing the value of the firm. Because I want you guys to picture a day when the firm is throwing off tons of cash. Picture a day when other attorneys come up to you and say, holy cow, how do I get a firm like yours? And picture a day when you realize that you have an incredible firm that you could sell at any time, but you also don't have to. So whether you've owned your firm for a month, a year, or 10 years, the assessment will guide you to increased value. So I want to go back to the story about working for my family's law firm. I was really concerned about what would happen to my brother when my father was no longer there to really run everything. So one day I went into Daddy's office and I closed the door and I had that conversation with him. And he had the same concerns. But I told him I thought I had a solution. I thought we needed to sell. And I even know who the buyer would be. My father was thrilled. He was ready to run out and have the conversation with the guy that day. But I told him to hold off because I needed to do all the things that I've talked about today to increase the value of the firm before they sold. And then a miraculous thing happened. While I was overhauling the firm, while I was doing all of this stuff, my brother got married and something clicked for him and he changed. So I went back into my father's office and I closed the door and I asked him if he'd ever seen a TV show called Love It or List It. HGTV, not one of his favorite channels, so no big surprise. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. I explained that on the show, a couple has a budget for a team to renovate their existing house and has a budget to go look with a real estate agent for a new house. Once the renovations are finished, the couple has to decide whether they're going to love the renovated house or list it and buy the new one. Okay, so total quizzical look on his face. He couldn't figure out where I was going. I told him I thought we had been playing love it or list it with the firm. While I had been fixing it up, my brother had fallen in love with the firm. He had taken responsibility for the things he wasn't interested in before. And the bonus is that they were now in a position that they could sell at any time. No prep necessary. That was already done. They had a firm that was throwing off lots of cash with happy employees and happy clients. And they were getting to do what they wanted, which was spending time in the courtroom. So I want to leave you with one last thing. You deserve a profitable firm that compensates you and your employees well. You deserve a profitable firm that allows you time for other passions. You deserve a profitable firm that continues to increase in value because you deserve a profitable firm. Okay, so we've got 15 minutes for questions. And I wanted to start with the question I get most often. And that is, hey, Brooke, what has the biggest impact on value? And I'm going to tell you, that's a really easy one. It's your financials. Getting that 1/3 SDE is key. Having clean financials that can be produced quickly gives a buyer confidence that what you are representing is what they're actually buying. And I think this is kind of cool. Interestingly, the area that will bring your firms down the least is technology. Most people know that when they buy a firm, there's going to be a big tech project to get the firms integrated. So they expect that. So, it's not worth spending a ton of time there. That being said, if you are using 80% of all of your software's functionality and all your software, your practice management, your QBO, and any marketing software you have, if those are all integrated, that can actually significantly improve the value of the firm because you can produce data backing up all of your claims. So, anybody else have questions? And there's dead silence.
I'll ask a question. First of all, Brooke, that was excellent. I enjoyed it. I want to know, obviously, the financial part is, I'll back you up on that 100%. How do you help people find the time to work on this more? Because I often find that they want to set themselves up to sell, but they're just constrained by their everyday work that they're doing. Do you offer some tips on how to work it in and focus on it every day or once a week or something like that?
It really is about having the right people in the right seats. Once you solve your people problems, the other things fall into place because you have people who are a core values match. You tend to have a great vision. You've got everybody rowing in the same direction. Everybody really understands what their job is and what's expected of them. There's less confusion around that. And it frees up an immense amount of time. And it's in that time that people can get this done.
Yeah, it comes back to the owners, partners, usually, and making it a priority, right?
Yeah, and having discipline.
Mhm.
And that's part of the reason why I love EOS so much is the accountability it brings to a company, any company, is amazing and makes a huge difference. Linda, what you got?
Yeah, I have a question. So what happens when partners want to sell? Does the like it get distributed equally among the partners, or do they have like already agreed upon like already agreed upon like how the money is like like distributed?
They've got a partnership agreement.
Okay.
Please God, they have a partnership agreement.
Yeah. Okay.
If they don't have a partnership agreement, then you have a very messy business divorce
Right. Okay. Thank you.
and you might end up in court.
I've actually seen firms have to dissolve for that reason because there's no agreement, there's no buy-sell agreement, there's no way to let one partner out, and they dissolve to let the partner out, and then they don't reformulate. That's happened twice in the last year.
And isn't that horrible? And don't you feel for those people? I'm like, how hard is it to get a partnership agreement? I made my father and brother write a partnership agreement for the two of them because they don't have any other equity partners. They've got now non-equity partners, but they don't have any equity partners. And they're like, you got to be kidding. You want us to write a partnership agreement? I'm like, uh-huh. I love that. They getting lawyers to get along.
But I guarantee you, those same lawyers that don't have partnership agreements have them for all their clients.
Mm-hmm. And it just makes life so easy. I was working with two firms that wanted to merge in Louisiana. And one of the firms was like, oh, we don't need a partnership agreement. We can just gentleman's handshake this. And I was like, oh, hell no, that's not happening. And my client was not from that firm. He was the other firm. And I'm like, we're going to really talk about this. And it was in those discussions that he's like, well, I mean, I think I want to merge with them. And so they shook hands. They basically came up with a letter of intent. And it immediately started to fall apart. And they never merged. Which was what I told him was going to happen. Everything I predicted happened. Sometimes you can't see it from the inside. Sometimes you need that outside person.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, lawyers do business mergers for businesses, other businesses all the time, but you don't see the forest for the trees when you're kind of in your own. You're like, oh, look, this is a great deal, or this is going to be great. And yeah, got to do that premarital counseling.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have one more question, if that's okay, Brooke.
Yeah.
So what do you find are the most motivating factors for owners to sell their law firms? Is it because they reach retirement age, or there are other motivating factors? Or profit driven?
Yeah, so how funny. I actually took that out of my presentation to make sure we had enough time. You know, people do it for all kinds of reasons. There are some attorneys that die at their desks. And they're totally happy to do that because they love what they're doing. And they have gotten their workload down to a more manageable workload.
Mhm.
And that's fine. Most people, don't want to do that. They may have gotten tired of practicing law and want to go do something else, and they want to they need the cash from their law firm to fund the next venture. Some people want to pass it on in their family, like my father. There's some people that want to leave like a legacy. So I've got a client who really was one of the best people at what he did. He had a very, very niched practice, very niched. And he had clients come from big firms all the time. So the big firm said, oh yeah, we could do that. And they really couldn't. And so he would have to clean it up. And his big concern was he was ready to retire. He needed someone to buy his firm that would run it the same way he did, that would have that same attention to detail to this very, very niche type of law. Because if he just closed down, all those clients wouldn't get taken care of in the same way, and they would be running afoul of the IRS all the time. So he needed that legacy to continue.
Mhm.
So, there are a lot of different reasons why they sell. Some need to fund their retirement. But at 2.5 to 4x your SDE, selling your law firm is not a huge, it's not a huge exit.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I've had my own firm for 18 years and have had pretty good success. And actually, I'm in a merger discussion now.
Congratulations.
Well, good luck is probably better. This comes up once every 5 years for my firm because, I've got a reasonably good practice that's been going for a long time. The one thing about, though, having a law firm called Frank G. Goldman PC, you've already mentioned this, is the dependence that, people hire me. How do you address the concerns that I know that certain client, even if I do a merger where I'm not retiring, I'm merging and taking a practice, but probably taking more of a management role because of the goals that the firm wants to have. This is a firm that's trying to plant a flag in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So I'd have more of a management marketing, the minders, finders, grinders. I'd become more of frankly, a finder. Yeah.
Yeah.
The concern, and unless you are an Austin and Bird here in the Atlanta market, unless you're an Austin, Bird, King and Spalding, something like that, clients hire lawyers, they don't hire firms. In other words, when I get retained, they're getting retained for my guidance, counsel. I don't get Coca-Cola, I don't get Bank of America, I don't get Home Depot, because the general counsel for those corporations need to hire a King and Spalding, Austin and Bird, or another gigantic firm, because if something goes wrong, they have to be able to tell the board of directors, well, we hired the biggest firm in Atlanta. What else were we supposed to do?
Right.
So they're not going to hire guys like me. But my clients, which are closely held businesses and corporations, hire me for my counsel. It's why I said I was 50% attorney, 50% psychologist. I am going to try to turn, frankly, my practice into 100% psychologist, 0%. If I never answer another interrogatory again, I will not be unhappy. My concern in going down this path is client says, well, Frank, we hired you. What's the psychology, speaking of psychology, of transitioning from being the day-to-day pick up the phone guy, and I would certainly continue to do that when necessary, but also transitioning some of that work away to a younger associate. How have people found that transition?
Let me tell you about the best sales call I was ever in. So it was 2012. I am still talking about this sales call. It was a trust and estate attorney. And I was there for my family. And the guy is huge. He is one of the top guys in Texas for what he does. And he said, I am the architect. And pointed to the associate that had been in the sales call.
Yeah, that's good.
Is the builder.
Yeah, that's good.
We had everything. And then he told us his price per hour at, 700 and hers at 400. And my father could not, was pretty much ready to physically throw him out of the room. So, because we had gotten what we needed for him at that point, he happened to have done it in the sales call. So, it is doing that. You are there. I no longer take clients. That doesn't mean that I'm not taking care of clients. That doesn't mean that I'm not involved. That doesn't mean that I don't know what's going on. You know, I had a client today that I know what his brand new purpose is for his law firm. So I'm still involved. I'm just not his particular CFO. And so it takes a while of doing that to get it transitioned. It's not something that happens overnight, but they learn to call that other person first. So I promised you guys a link to that 35 question assessment. And here it is. So if you guys want to go do that, this also has my contact info if you want to get in touch with me for any reason. And we are at time. I have a few more minutes if anybody has any questions.
This was great, Brooke. I really appreciate it, and love the resources. And like we were telling Frank, you know, it takes time, and it takes us as the person moving up and over to stay in our own lanes as we allow other people to start working with the client.
Yep. It does. Okay. All right.
Well, I'm absolutely delighted by today's turnout and everybody's interaction. I saw everybody on camera, nobody listening while they're in the car or doing other things, which is totally fine too. We just get what we can. And then, of course, some people just register and tell me they're going to watch the replay, which we love that as well. That will go on our YouTube channel. And I should be able to get that out probably this weekend to everybody. So I really appreciate it. And check back next month. We have, I won't change the screen around for interest of time, but we have a profit first expert, Nicole Wright, coming to speak to us about the profit first method in law firms.
Thank you very much.
All
Thanks, guys.
right. Enjoy
Thank
your
you.
summer, and
Thank
we'll see
you.
you next month.
Thanks.
Take care.